Before we get started, I just want to say that this video does not contain legal advice. I'm just going over my interpretation of federal and state laws. With the recent killing of the healthcare CEO, silencers and homemade firearms have been in the media spotlight again. I've seen a lot of misinformation in regards to 3D printed firearms, and a lot of misunderstandings about what's legal and what's not. So I figured it'd also be important to talk about the federal and state law in relation to making your own firearms. I'm going to do my best to cover everything possible. So I am of the opinion that you have a right to make firearms, but what you make is not allowed to be sold or distributed to another person. That's the federal law according to the ATF. Despite that, some states regulate what they call ghost guns. For example, as far as I can tell, it's not legal to make any firearm parts in California unless you have the required licensing. The other states that have restrictions in place typically just require you to get the firearm serialized. But if you do totally prohibit it like California, in total about 15 states have restrictions in place. I've seen people misinterpret federal law and believe that federal law prohibits an individual from making their own firearms. Currently, 26 U.S.C. Section 5861 states that it's prohibited to, and I quote, to receive or possess a firearm which is not identified by a serial number as required by this chapter. Now, someone may read this and think that it's federally illegal to make a firearm and not have it serialized, but this is where we need to read this code and see what it considers as a firearm. When reading what it technically lays out as a firearm, it basically equates to just NFA restricted items. It does not mention non-NFA items such as your typical handgun or long gun. That being said, the federal government has tried to regulate some parts often used when making your own firearms, such as 80% lowers. These are essentially pieces of material shaped like gun parts that you need to finish making yourself. This is important to know because having the ability to make your own firearms is a necessity. If civilian manufacturers continue to be attacked and end up going out of business, and the government succeeds in making it illegal to make your own firearms, then we would essentially have no legal way to obtain new firearms. In my opinion, that would be 100% unconstitutional. Many states are using crime as the main excuse for why they want to ban privately made firearms, but that doesn't make much sense when looking at the data. For example, when looking at Chicago, only 1.2% of seized firearms were privately made. When looking at Philly, 2.2% of seized firearms were privately made. On the other hand, it's estimated that nearly 400,000 firearms are stolen each year, which makes their way into the black market. It's pretty clear that criminals would rather illegally acquire their weapons through straw purchases rather than print and build them. If they were willing to do all the work it takes to build your own firearm, then they would probably have an actual job and not resort to a life of crime. That being said, the government definitely wants to limit people's ability to obtain firearms, which includes the privately made ones. Currently, manufacturers are being sued by different state governments and even by foreign countries. And in my opinion, the end goal is to drown the manufacturers in legal fees. On top of this, more and more states are putting restrictions in place for making firearms. Even when you aren't looking at the government's actions, there are 3D printing software development companies making algorithms to stop you from making gun parts. So there's the quick rundown on what's going on. Hope you guys liked the video. It's my first full one. Normally I just make a bunch of shorts. If you have anything you'd like to add, I'd love to hear it in the comment section below. For those interested, I'll have all the sources listed in the description. Don't trust my word for it. Go and read everything yourself. If you're one of the few that made it this far and somehow enjoyed listening to my boring and monotone rant, then I'd appreciate it if you stuck around. Have a good day. Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a Happy New Year. Please be safe in your travels and don't drink and drive or anything.